Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to kick off today's session on how to transform your ITSM strategy for 2026 using AI and automation. Over the next hour, we're going to move from the pain points IT faces today through practical maturity steps to the latest in automation and integration. And our goal is really to help you reclaim time, boost morale, drive real business value so that you can focus on innovation and not just firefighting. So let me introduce you to our panel. I'm Sandi Conrad from Infotech Research Group, and I'll be guiding our discussion. Joining me are Andrew Graff, Chief Product Officer, and Alicia Van Manen, Senior Solutions Engineer, both from TeamDynamix. TeamDynamix has consistently been in the top quadrant of reviews for mid-market and enterprise with our vendor division software reviews. And so together today, we're going to share insights, practical outcomes, and a live demo. So if you have questions as we're going through, please add them into the chat and we'll address them at the end. So let's start by setting the stage. Many IT teams are actually feeling the pain of being caught in a cycle of password resets, ticket cleanups, onboarding and offboarding, managing credentials, and software provisioning. Many of these repetitive tasks are urgent and important to the end users and their ability to work, but they're not tasks that align to the strategic goals of the business and IT. The workload is reactionary and repetitive, and may contribute to a large backlog issue. Um, and that may be really difficult for people to resolve everything without the right data or the right diagnostic tools. Team members who are primarily focused on these tasks can become disengaged, especially if the workload ratios are off or if people don't actually have the training and development they need. So, when we look at what's on this screen, think about what a difference it could make if you could actually eliminate just one of these pain points tomorrow. Andrew, I know that you're helping customers with these issues. And so, what are your customers saying about how these challenges impact their ability to serve the business?
Yeah, what we found with a study was that their team members are spending 2 to 3 months on tasks that can be automated, and the menial work that can be automated. And so what we're seeing is customers look to a combination of tools, whether that be better workflow, AI, automation, to help reduce that dramatically and allow people to spend time on what's more important to the business, doing the things that require a person. The way I look at it is if there's a task where somebody's just a mouse jockey, all they're doing is clicking and typing, that's a great opportunity to make the customer happier because they can get it almost real time and also make our people happier. So that we're seeing those kind of tools being applied to these types of business problems.
Great. Okay. And IT isn't the only one who's feeling the pain. They're not the only ones who are kind of wondering about these repetitive things. The business is also feeling it. So, um, business users are frustrated, right? They have interruptions to their work. If nothing's automated, everything takes longer to fix. It might be harder for them to get the tools and innovations they need because, they're in this, your teams are in this reactive place. And so the business teams are really looking to IT to lead innovation, to cut costs, to boost efficiency. But when IT's stuck in a reactive cycle, it's really hard for them to do that. So right now, within our organization at Infotech, every department has strategic and transformational projects in the queue, and we're working on a number of things, and IT is involved in every single one of them. So it can be quite significant, and you need to prepare to support all of those other projects as well. Now, as we talk about pain points and priorities, we want to hear from all of you. So we're going to take a quick poll. What are your top ITSM priorities right now? Is it faster resolution, increasing self-serve, automating manual tasks, expanding for enterprise service management, or reducing admin overhead? So vote, please. And if your priority isn't listed, feel free to add it in the chat. And we'll discuss the results in a moment. So while this is coming in, Andrew, have you seen changes in the priorities with your clients from the last time we talked about this about a year ago?
I think that the focus on automation and using AI in combination with automation is probably the most pronounced. But I also think that it hits on a lot of these, right? That is targeting faster resolution, right? That is targeting increased self-service. That is automating manual tasks. So I think that's probably the biggest focus, but it addresses all but one, maybe two of these points.
Mhm. Okay. So I think we are close to getting some results on this poll. We'll just wait another moment and see what comes in. And then we can do a quick review. Oh, oh, there it is. Okay. It disappeared on me for a second. Yeah, we're looking at 45% are looking to automate those manual tasks. And then self-serve adoption is pretty big as well. So that kind of aligns to what you were saying as well, Andrew.
Yeah, I think that's very indicative of what we're seeing in the space, and it makes sense. And I also think that what's changing that is that the products and tools available are far easier to use than they were 3 or 4 years ago. So this has become more accessible to far more organizations because of that evolution.
Right. Okay. Great. All right. Well, let's move to the next slide here. So before we actually talk about doing the transformation of IT, there are some other considerations, and resource and project management is a big one. So when technicians and engineers are splitting their time between projects and support, it's also really hard to get that true picture of capacity and utilization because we are using different tools in most cases. So centralizing that intake and streamlining the planning can help to prioritize automation and improve that collaboration between the different groups. And I have seen teams dramatically improve that visibility and feedback loop just by consolidating those tools and processes. Using a portfolio management tool allows them to gain visibility and better understand how those teams are splitting their time between that reactive and proactive work. So IT departments who haven't embraced automation are definitely struggling to meet organizational needs. And when we think about why that is, it really is all about the fact that we have too many really smart people who are spending their really valuable time doing repetitive manual work. They're applying those same workarounds to recurring issues because there isn't another option. So what we want to do is look at things a little bit differently. Many of the support teams actually live in the lower part of this graphic. They're circling between improving foundational service desk and standardization. And especially if there's turnover on the team and then you circle through that again. Real lasting change and transformation to your service and support system comes from systematizing and automating operations. And initially, that automation will resolve a lot of those recurring issues and deal with requests faster. But it leads you to be able to then focus on root cause and continual improvement and making lasting changes. And so that automation will actually shift the effort from dealing with workarounds to value creation. Um, Now, Andrew, when I was in the advisor role, I saw this circular approach pretty consistently, and I know that it is really difficult to make all these changes at once. I'm experiencing it in my current role, and so how quickly can the IT team start to see that value? What are you seeing, or are you seeing that integration playing a part in speeding up that process or slowing down the timeline? How does that look with your clients?
Yeah, in general, it speeds up the timeline. And I think one of the biggest challenges is getting the momentum to take action. And what we find is when a customer can identify low-hanging fruit, so for example, password resets, onboarding, deploying software when somebody needs access, what are the processes that are uniformly frustrating for everybody involved? The customer doesn't want to wait on a response. The person doing the work in IT doesn't want to do it. Taking action in those areas builds momentum. And that can be low-hanging fruit, right? I would say onboarding is probably one of the most painful, but it's also more complicated. So if you can knock off some of the easier wins and people start saying, wow, that was really great. Everyone's saying that's really great. Then it starts to build momentum. I will say to get started, there does need to be at least a small group of people who are committed to getting some of those low-hanging fruit items taken care of or addressed. And that will start building momentum. I think almost every one of our customers has found something to start with that was meaningful. I think the ones that try to boil the ocean, they end up going back to, okay, that's going to be hard from an organizational perspective. Let's just start with a couple things that add a lot of value. So I think if you can skip that process and just start with those couple things, it'll save you a lot of time and make people a lot happier with IT too.
Right.
So,
And
it's kind of interesting. When you think about AI, and I was talking about tooling, right? How does the tooling change? To me, it AI without the ability to integrate and automate is only a partial return on investment. It is great to answer questions, et cetera, but to really get the optimal results, you have to be able to reach into other systems to grab information or reach into other systems to take action. So what we're seeing is organizations who do this reasonably well, not even the most advanced, are seeing a 30 to 60% ticket deflection. The AI tooling that's helping technicians respond faster, right? 40 to 90% faster is we're finding about 80% accuracy. And so when you combine these things, it starts making a meaningful impact. And the results, which I think is what most people care about, is that customers turned out to be happier because the IT people, when they had a problem that actually required troubleshooting, questioning, working together, they spent more time with them. They weren't staring at a queue on their screen that they knew they needed to get back to. They were much less likely to pass them tier two or delay a response. And they were getting the other things almost immediately. The internal teams were a lot happier too because they were no longer the mouse jockey that I mentioned earlier, and they were doing more meaningful work, more fulfilling work. So I think that the results can be fairly dramatic, honestly, when this is done well. And so if you sit there and think, just some back of the napkin math, like, well, what would happen if we lopped off 50% of the incoming tickets? And what if we were able to respond 40 to 90% faster when they do come in? What would that do for us? If we could free that kind of time, and the average ticket response, it ranges 4 to 8 minutes in our research. So what if you freed that time up? Look at the queue, right? It's usually not, oh, we can get rid of a bunch of people. I don't know a single IT department says, oh my gosh, if we do this, we have all this overhead we could cut. Most of them are saying, listen, this will get our heads above water. We will stop drowning and we can actually provide meaningful service. So if you think about it, you look at the queue of work. If you just took a queue, here's all the tickets that we have right now, and here's our MTTR. Just print it out, put it on your screen, and cross off all the tickets that you think you might be able to address in this way. And the ones that are remaining, how much faster could you have gotten to those? How much faster could you have gotten through that queue, right? Those are just some exercises that you can go through with no cost and not a lot of time to determine how this might impact you.
absolutely. And the middle one here, the increased accuracy. If you think about what happens when something's done wrong and you have to reverse it, redo it,
Mhm.
you're essentially tripling the time that you're doing that task, and
Yep.
then there's implications downstream. So, even that accuracy can make a big difference in the
Yeah.
volume. And so, yeah, I haven't heard of one organization that said, "Oh, our IT department is just too big."
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so
Yeah,
I think most
that's
people would
right.
appreciate this, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Um, yeah. So we're going to do another poll here, just to look at the maturity of different organizations that are on our webinar here. So we really want to understand, like, where are you in your ITSM journey? Are you at that lower maturity where you've got, some of the basics, you've got some self-serve? Are you somewhere in that middle and the mature with a broader range of capabilities, or are you more advanced and have at least some automation and AI in place? So while those answers are coming in, Andrew, the ITIL guiding principle, start where you are, speaks to that
Mhm.
need to understand your maturity, your strengths and weaknesses. How does Team Dynamics actually guide your clients to increase their maturity?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we're being a service management platform. We may have in a single customer one to many departments in IT. And usually they're not all at a similar point of maturity. So, from a product perspective, the challenge is how do you provide products that can support a lower maturity organization along their journey? So you don't overwhelm them up front, yet not underwhelm the experts, right? And that's what we strive to do. So we try to be able to say, okay, we'll meet you where you are, but we also want to make sure that as you mature, you're not going to have to platform switch. There's so many products where they're great for a lower maturity organization, but then 2 years down the road, if you've accomplished your goals, you're going to have to completely re-platform, which everyone knows is very, very painful for most
Mhm.
organizations. So our goal is to say, okay, we'll start you here, wherever you want to end from a maturity standpoint, everyone becoming the most mature an IT organization can be, because that might not be necessary for your business, right? So
Mhm.
I think from a product perspective, it's like, how do you help a client along a journey as far as they want to go?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have our poll numbers coming in here. So this has ended up kind of where I expected.
Mhm.
But what are your thoughts on the different percentage of maturity?
Yeah, this does not surprise me at all. I think the good news is there's actually more advanced, as a percentage, more advanced organizations than I think we would have had a year ago, which is good news. It means I think
Hmm.
people are seeing that, hey, the tooling is better, right? The way we can support our processes is better and it's easier than it was a couple of years ago.
Great. Okay, and I'm just going to flip slides here real quick as well now.
Yeah, I think, when you think about AI, one of the big areas, I mentioned it in 2 slides ago, is how do you help people in your organization who get requests respond more quickly, but also with more value? And so this concept of AI assistance that is able to look at all of your knowledge content, look on the web, and also look at your old tickets for content that could adequately respond. It's really interesting what happens, right? What we found is higher velocity of responses, faster, I guess higher customer satisfaction. And for the technicians doing it, it dramatically helped them as far as their mental outlook on their job. So we see satisfaction go up. And you also find that there's opportunity to generate a lot more knowledge when you're using AI. So let's say you have a request and there is no good knowledge content and there's some basic stuff on the web, it pulls it in there. Well, having it be able to say, hey, would you like AI to help you draft a knowledge base article, starts increasing the speed of that flywheel of creating knowledge, feeding that knowledge back into self-service, so you have more self-service or faster response. And so that's also really interesting. And then I think one thing that's underappreciated is how much impact don't have the institutional knowledge, because they can essentially gain that institutional knowledge with the assistance of AI. So it's now reaching back to all the tickets that have come before, the knowledge-based articles, et cetera. So your new technicians can add more value more quickly.
Hmm. Absolutely. Great. We're going to start with a bit of a discussion on business users here and what we can do for the business users. So there's a few different things that we can do for them. We're going to talk about the fact that we've got some who could actually use the same tools we're using in IT to manage their requests and issues. Many departments are managing their work through email, spreadsheets, and SharePoint, but they could see a tremendous value in moving into that enterprise service management solution. So, Andrew, if you can tell us a little bit about Festival Foods, first of
Sure.
all, and what they've done, and then we can go into more
Yeah.
details after that.
Yeah, I think that the headline with Festival Foods is that it enabled the business users, just as Sandy described them, to actually conceptualize new processes and implement them without the assistance of developers or deep technical resources. So that was the big thing for them. The headliners, look, we have these ideas for how we can transform our business. We don't want the tool to be incredibly weighty and we don't want it to hold us back. And along that journey, we don't want to have a huge team of people just there to care for and feed the system. So that's the headliner there. Low admin overhead, yet high capability from a product perspective. I think that's what we do better than anyone in the market, that enterprise power that's simple to own for what you get out of it.
Great. Okay. Now, regardless of whether it's a business group that's doing the enterprise service management or it's IT, there is still a similar way of doing business. So that quick review of shift left here can really apply to all different kinds of service scenarios. So shift left, as described here, is moving the issue resolution as close to the end user as possible. So traditionally, tickets start at level 1 at the service desk. They escalate to higher levels if needed. But if we empower the frontline staff to be able to do more, and we also provide really good self-help options, then we can reduce a lot of that wait time. We can free up the specialists so that they can do more complex work, maybe do some of that root cause analysis. And it does mean that the role of the service desk level 1 tends to evolve a little bit more as well. So at level 0, if we're doing shift left, level 0 is really providing you those self-help tools like chatbots, virtual assistants, automated password resets. They can deflect a significant portion of tickets. Integrating an app store into your service catalog or into chat can also let users access the tools that they need when they need them and easily as well. And then natural language processing and generative AI are really helping to improve that user experience as well. So it makes it easier for people to find answers and resolve issues on their own. And then there's also something we don't talk about very much, which is visual remote tools. They're like an augmented reality, and they can actually improve remote resolution rates by 89%. And they can increase that fixed time or first time fix rate by as much as 84% for field agents. They can see what's going on before they come out, make sure that they've got the right tools and so on. Um, Level -1 is about ticket prevention. So this is the work that might not be seen as easily by the end users. So you are going to want to have the right tools with good reporting so that you can actually measure success. So we've taught our users over the years some of those self-serve tricks where they just reboot or they shut down the app and restart. And so a lot of those incidents are now going unreported. And we wanted to offer that self-serve, but it hides the fact that these incidents are now going unreported. So because that's not visible, we want to make sure that even though the business users aren't calling the service desk, they've hit a high frustration threshold, we still need to figure out how to solve those. So because of this, ticket volume might actually be lower than the incident volume. So some of the tools, the digital employee experience or DEX tools, and agentic AI can also really help to automate that issue of reporting. And so now you can actually have the system identify, hey, there's an issue with this user. You can start to look for those patterns, and then you can use that to identify and solve the problems that your end users aren't reporting. And it really also allows that proactive update, self-healing, and it can be created for the on-demand requests as well. And you can create, bots that sit in the self-serve space. So as you think about the different type of self-solve solutions for your organizations, you need to match the solution to your users' technical proficiency as well. The knowledge articles aren't going to be used if your workers are not technical or if the instructions aren't straightforward. So when you're thinking about designing that self-solve, look for the type of solution that will serve your audience best. So prepare knowledge articles or videos, create forms and workflows, determine what solutions will actually be needed to be bought and integrated. And then, Andrew, you've got another client that you wanted to showcase that has also done this. So I'm going to flip the slide and let you talk through that.
Yeah, I think this is a good example too of figuring out what adds value as you think about AI automations. And what they did was look at where are they spending a lot of time. And one of the examples was equipment replacement. So is somebody eligible for a piece of to replace their laptop? And if so, how do we automate the selection and fulfillment? Because that was taking a tremendous amount of time. So they focused there because that was a process that nobody enjoyed and they were successful. The other one was balance inquiry. So checking the balance of certain accounts. In this case, it was higher education. So students could check balances and actually add funds in an automated way because these were calls they were getting regularly. And so, the fact that it's higher ed is not relevant. The fact that they're figuring out, hey, what are the business problems that our customer has, and how can we use these tools to fix them in a better way? And I think they executed it really, really well. And once again, it generated momentum. So then they were able to start implementing a lot more automations and AI because people were using the tool for those things. And so they just started coming to the solution more and more. I think it was a great success story.
And ultimately, if you want your self-serve to be used, you've got to make it useful, and that's a great way of doing that. Okay, so we have talked a lot about the individual end user experience, but that's not the only approach. So other automations do live in infrastructure operations and app support spaces, and they do have that broader organizational benefit. So I'm going to go through a few of these as well. And from if we think about it as how they relate back to TeamDynamix, a lot of it is again through integrations, right? There's going to be a lot of different ways that we can integrate these different solutions with an ITSM tool. So first I want to talk a little bit about automation and AI. People are very nervous about how AI is going to impact jobs. The concerns are valid, but we often see other reasons hiding behind, or if we see big layoffs, it's often other reasons that they're just hiding behind the AI label. It's not always AI that's causing it. So AI and automation, especially in IT, will definitely evolve the way that we work. And there's a lot of talk about automation actually replacing jobs, but we really see it as differently. It's really about this automation 2.0, giving your teams the superpowers, boosting their output, accelerating diagnosis, reducing that repetitive work. And instead of replacing people, we're enabling them to focus on creating and delivering value. This quote here, some CIOs see a sysadmin and want to replace them with a Roomba. I see a sysadmin and want to build them an Iron Man suit. Quite frankly, who wouldn't want an Iron Man suit, right? So definitely something to think about. So as we start to think about how we're managing the end user devices and services, that's a prime area for automation. The impact to the business can be quite significant if new hires can't actually get access to the technology that they need on day one. So integrations with HRIS, identity and access management, Active Directory management solutions, they can all streamline onboarding, offboarding, account management. They can reduce that time to set up the accounts by as much as 70%. Zero-touch provisioning and automated application deployment can save days in setup time. It can be integrated to a service catalog for self-serve. And unified endpoint management enables that centralized control of devices, policies, and security, regardless of whether the supported users are on-site or remote. Technology used to meet organizational goals, that just needs to work. So as we think about all those different enterprise applications, so building that resiliency into your infrastructure and operations is going to be essential. AI ops can automate your incident identification and diagnostics, while workload automation handles maintenance tasks and data transfers for IT in the business. And these can all, especially the AI ops, can actually create tickets in your service desk tool and close them once it's resolved, and look for can even provide suggestions on how you might be able to fix something. And then that infrastructure as code supports the automated provisioning and load balancing. It can make your environment more robust and more responsive to those business needs. And in IT, we are regularly looking for and validating data, and we're all living in spreadsheets. I even have some. Um, and asset and configuration management databases are often manually populated. That leads to duplication of work. It means sometimes you have accuracy problems. It makes it harder for the asset security and operational teams to all work together. So automation for data collection will dramatically improve the value of the data and provide that with less effort. Discovery and dependency mapping, asset and configuration management, patch reporting, they can all be automated. Integrations to other data sources could also reduce manual inputs that are needed for any of these operational practices as well. And AI powered tools can generate documentation, knowledge articles, even route tickets to the right experts, reducing that manual effort and improving those outcomes. So, good list of things here to think about, different ways that you can start searching for solutions for some of the things you're looking for. So some of these are built into ITSM solutions, many are integrated. Low code capabilities can really make a difference in achieving that value quickly. And Andrew, I'm going to get you to talk about Pima County.
Yeah, sure. The big takeaway, I think, again, you'll see a theme in these is identifying a business problem, a process that's painful, and addressing it, right? And using that as a stepping stone. In their case, they implemented a onboarding offboarding process that touched many, many different departments and reduced headaches dramatically, and they didn't need software developers to do that. So I think that for them was that point at which they showed, hey, this is the value of better workflow and augmented workflow, and it didn't take us months and months and months to implement it. So I think that's the key takeaway here.
Yeah, the that fast time to value is pretty important these days. So great. So I want to go through a couple of stats here as well. 60% of engineers will spend 25% or more of their time building and maintaining custom scripts. So while there are some unique needs that really justify that effort, it's equally important to recognize where some of those pre-built automations could accelerate that time to value and reduce the fragility of some of the things that we're doing within IT. So pre-built scripts could actually provide a 15 to 20% return on that time. It could free up, about 2 hours per engineer per week, which if you've got 10 engineers, that's about 1,000 hours per year that's saved. So, it can be quite significant. And then as we discuss build versus buy, some of these data points may also help you to think about the risk of that build side of things. 70% of engineers say that their scripts and APIs are poorly documented and lack proper controls. So that significantly reduces the resiliency and flexibility. And even more concerning is that 47% report that their scripts don't meet security standards, and another 19% actually don't know whether they do. So in an environment when we have rising cybersecurity threats, we have insecure or undocumented internal scripts, that really makes security's job even harder. So when the business is expecting that rapid delivery, it's sometimes difficult to justify investing heavily in that internally built automation, especially when those stable and supported solutions already exist. But I think it's important that you review your in-house builds carefully, see if they are actually solving unique problems, and then make sure that they're fully documented and secure. And then if not, then you could consider purchasing vetted scripts or integrating with an existing automation platform. So to create a business case to improve those capabilities, there are a lot of things to think about. But as you're thinking about where to start, remember that automation can require a very large investment, and you may be fighting for a portion of budget with other teams. So as you think about that business case, you want to look at a bunch of different factors. The first is, are your customers impacted by poor processes and unstable systems? Is your team spending time on the urgent, repetitive work or on the important value-added work? How easily can you support existing organizational technology and services? And are you bringing in new technology and services that cannot be easily supported? And then ask what use cases will drive the most value. So looking at what are those pain points, we want to look at what are the use cases or the opportunities to automate. And I've named off a bunch of different tools, but in order to see which one of those types of tools are going to work for you, you're going to want to start with the data to determine those most impactful solutions. So use a defensible, consistent method to demonstrate the value of automation that you intend to implement. Start with that ticket analysis. Find out what the common repeatable tasks are. Consult with your technicians. Many of these repeatable tasks or difficulties around data analysis don't actually have tickets. They're part of, another process. So you want to look at where your teams are currently experiencing that pain and dig into that to identify, where is that manual repetitive work that could be automated? And then from a project standpoint, see what projects or parts of projects would be hindered due to lack of automation. Do you have difficulties accessing reliable data, difficult or slow data analysis, repetitive or error-prone work? And then go through a prioritization exercise to tackle the most impactful issues first so that you can then investigate which tools will meet those needs. And so as we talk about that prioritization, I turn it back over to you, Andrew, so you can talk through that process.
Yeah, and I also think a great source is your customers too, figuring out, hey, what irritates you? There's a lot of research that suggests anywhere from 40% to 70% of your customers are frustrated with the services you provide. So digging into that so you can identify those and triangulate across all of those inputs where to focus. And I think once you have a list of, hey, here are the opportunities. What I've seen to be successful is to say, all right, can this be automated first? Yes, yes, no, no. And then should it be? Because just because you can do something, as I think most of us have figured out, doesn't mean you should do it. And when I think the should answer is yes, is when it improves or has a neutral impact on customer satisfaction. It reduces risk and it has a neutral or improvement to the experience of your team members, the people actually providing the service, right? If you can answer those questions, that's a candidate, in my opinion. And so breaking that down and thinking, okay, well, what type of automation? So is it fully automated or are we using AI for portions of it? And that can kind of help you triangulate. And then there's the cost. And that's just not dollars, but it's also time. You could break that into two categories. But for the initial review, I think it's easier to keep it simple. Like, hey, could we do it? Should we do it? What would it take to do it? And by doing that, I think a picture should emerge of where you might focus. And you might look at it and say, hey, can our existing tooling do this? Do we need an integration automation layer that we don't currently have to do this, right? I'm a advocate of keeping it simple until it can't be anymore. So if you have the tooling to do it, great. If you don't, that can become a roadmap and an objective in and of itself. What I also like about this exercise is it's something you can revisit every couple months, once a quarter, because technologies change, needs change, but it gives you a roadmap to improve your business. It gives you a roadmap to continually show value. It also gives you career paths for your team members, something that you might not have had clear career paths for. Now you can say, look, we need people to help us along this journey. You take that person who was a sysadmin, or maybe they were tier one or two, they're just interested in technology. They were the ones who teach themselves technology to fix problems, right? They're constantly asking you, like, hey, where's my career going here? You want to keep them, but you don't have a great answer to that question. That's the ideal candidate to really make your business soar.
Absolutely. Okay. Andrew, do
And
you want to go through?
go ahead, Sandy.
No, I was just going to say, do you want to maybe take us through the little
Yeah.
bit more specific to Team Dynamics?
Yeah, yeah. And so what, from a team dynamics perspective, I'm going to introduce us just to frame up the kinds of tooling we're talking about, right? So within the Team Dynamics product portfolio, we're a service management platform. You have your self-service capabilities, all the workflow for IT and non-IT. We have customers with hundreds of departments on the system who are managing different types of services and processes. Project portfolio management with an underlying layer of automation and AI, which I think is really important. Without automation and AI, the workflow work, non-AI, and the AI capabilities are extremely diminished. If you don't have something like a Boomi or a MuleSoft or a Workato behind it. And you might ask the question like, well, we have MuleSoft. What we find is most of the service organizations aren't given access, or the cost of it is so staggering that they don't get access to it. So when it comes to having a package, right, we package this up to help you along those journeys. So that's enough about Team Dynamics. I'm going to introduce my colleague Alicia, and she's going to take you through a visualization of some of the concepts we've been talking about. So you can think about it and say, hey, does my current tooling have this capability, right? Something to consider, or give you ideas if you were to go out and search for it. So Alicia, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Perfect. So I will share my screen a minute. Andrew or Sandy, if you're sharing, can I steal that from you? Perfect. Okay, so you all should be able to see my screen here. So for today, we're going to start in the end user portal. I'm going to show you, how you can make it easy for your end users to get that help that they need. And then we're going to switch over to the team member side, look at how AI and automation can really transform that technician workflow, as well as how multiple teams can utilize Team Dynamics. So, like I said, here we are in the portal. This is where your end users can get information and how-to documentation. They can submit requests. They can communicate with your team. And then down here in the bottom right, we've got our virtual service agent. So right away, we're seeing an automation here. We're looking up any outages that we're currently experiencing, and we're immediately notifying that end user. Now, maybe I need access to something. So I'm going to put in access request here. So with this, this is going to ask us, all right, well, what do you need access to? Maybe this is a list of different softwares. Maybe this is different Active Directory groups, whatever that access request might be for. And so we're going to choose that human resources group. Now, if this was something that didn't require approval, we could fully automate that process and just give them access on the spot. But because it's human resources, we do want that human touch there. This does require an approval. So we're going to ask them, hey, do you want to create a ticket for that access request? Now we're going to say yes there. And what that's going to do in the background is it's going to go and create a ticket for us and then just let us know, set those expectations. You'll be notified as soon as you've been added to that group. So, let's just take it up a notch a little bit here. So if I say something like, when can I get a new phone? So with this one, because the virtual service agent, it knows who I am because I'm logged in here. So it knows who I am, so it can truly personalize those answers for me. So it's going to look up my profile, look through those assets that I have, find my phone, and respond accordingly, saying, hey, this is not eligible for replacement until this date. However, if I was eligible, it could go ahead, create that ticket for me for IT to go process that upgrade. So, with that, this can integrate with Team Dynamics, but what else? The possibilities really are endless here. So you are in no way limited to Team Dynamics. So if you think about, all the other systems that your organization uses, I can say something here like, what's my PTO balance? Now, this virtual service agent, it can pull from those other systems that you have to pull everything into one place for your end users, and including things like, hey, this is what your PTO balance is. So with that, let's switch over to that team member perspective. So with that, let's first check out that first ticket that we submitted here of adding that employee to that Active Directory group. So within here, we had said that we wanted an approval before actually granting that access. So you can see here that currently we are waiting on that approval. Now, if we open up this workflow that's on this ticket, First thing we had is that approval step. Now, is as long as that is approved, then we're going to have this next iPass step here. Now, what this step is actually doing is reaching out to Active Directory to add that user to the appropriate group. So it's running that automation and that integration there. Now, the great thing about these workflows is that you can have those manual steps where you need them, but you can automate everything else. So we looked at that iPass step here, but what does that actually do, right? So I wanted to dive into that iPass platform really quick here and take a look at that. So this iPass platform is really a drag and drop builder where you can build those integrations. So, they're talking about, needing to write and maintain scripts. You don't have to do that. You can create those integrations in a low to no code drag and drop fashion. Now let's come back over into our ticketing system here. And I wanted to take a look at another ticket here. So maybe this ticket here, it came in from email or from a generic kind of report an issue link. So I don't have a ton of information here. Now, AI Service Assist is going to do a few different things here to help us. Now, if I come in to edit this ticket, first thing that I'm going to show you here is our suggested field values. So this is going to help those technicians by analyzing that ticket content and suggesting things like the correct incident type, the urgency, the priority, as well as which team to route it to. So in the long run, those fields end up being more accurate, leading to better reporting in the long run. And then the other piece that I wanted to point out here is our our agent assist. And so what this is going to do is it's going to provide targeted troubleshooting steps based on that ticketing context. And so it's going to give that suggested response. It's also going to pull back different knowledge-based articles that it believes that are helpful, as well as some other similar tickets here. So this is something, what we've been seeing so far is things like 40 to 90% faster response times using this ticket assist agent. Now, lastly here, Sandi and Andrew had also talked about ESM. So what does that really look like within TeamDynamix? So here I've just switched over. I'm signed in with somebody who has access to everything. So that way I can show you some of this. So within here, every department can really have their own application, or you can kind of think of it like a bucket of tickets. And so first we've got our human resources application. So you can see here they've got cases and HR requests. We also have a ticketing application for marketing. And so with them, they have different things like media or website services. And then we have yet another ticketing application here for facilities where they've got things like work orders, custodial services. And so really each of these different applications can also have separate statuses, forms, workflows, automations. And really at the end of the day, it gives each department a lot of flexibility in how they need it set up and how they want it to work. So today we've seen how you can really shift left and automate processes for your end users, how to use AI to turn your technical teams into those superheroes, and lastly, how multiple departments can utilize TeamDynamix while maintaining control in how they want it to work. So with that, Sandi and Andrew, I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you. That was awesome. Did you want to address anything else on this slide, Andrew, before we jump into Q&A?
No, I think we can jump into Q&A. I think those are just summaries of things we've already talked about. So, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Let me take us back to our final page here for questions. Look here. Did you want to start with those, Andrew, or did you want me to?
Yeah. I think I can dive in and maybe you can weigh in. One, So one of the questions is, I think one of the biggest challenges is having the correct software to manage these automated processing tasks. And coming up with a process to automate is easier than actually automating it if you don't have the right solution. That's 100% correct. Now, I think the key is finding a solution that has balance of capability but ease of use. So what we've done is we take a look and we say, okay, we want to be the best combination of those two things. So, there's a lot of workflow tools that are super, super simple, highly visual, but you quickly run out of capability or they become so complex to manage once you have any level of complexity in the process. So what we did is, in our case, was say, okay, let's look at Blockly and Scratch, which are used to teach children about technology logic, and let's use that as the foundation for it, so that you don't have to be a developer. It's helpful if you're a sysadmin or you've been in technology, but that's to me that's the key. Like what's the learning curve to actually be able to build automations, not for the next 6 months, but for the next 5 years. So it's got to be again that balance of, hey, how much capability we get versus what it takes to care for it. And you don't want to run out of leash a year in, because then you're trying to port everything you've done to a new platform, you're replatforming, going through the budget cycle. So that's kind of how we look at it. I mean, what's your observation there?
Well, it's a big job because I'm doing a little bit of this right now as well, and starting with that ticket analysis I think is important. Being able to kind of bucket things to say, well, these are the type of capabilities we need. Um, Looking at all of those different pieces, comparing that to some of the list of things that I've put in this presentation around the different types of capabilities, and then to be able to say like how specific do we need to get? Will this work in the cloud? I mean, there's all those architectural considerations as well. And then, how easily can we integrate these different tools together? So there is definitely a lot of work that has to happen to compare these, but, getting through some of those use cases and grouping them together is an important piece. One of the other things that I've done is I've taken my use cases and my ideas of like, these are how I'm going to solve these. And then I've actually used AI to say, what kind of skills do we need as we start to look at these? So, I still have to validate some of the results that I've gotten from AI on the skills piece, but that can also help to group them together to say, well, if I'm looking at, what are my biggest opportunities based on data, and how many different things can I get with sort of the maximum amount of training or different types of tools that we use. So it is complicated, but it's really kind of a matter of pulling out all those details and putting them together until you come up with that list for sure.
Yeah, the next question was, how can we set up a decent ITSM governance structure for an AI platform for an enterprise? So what are your thoughts on that? I have a few, but I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Well, there's a few different things that you need to consider. Obviously, security and the ability to um, uh, understand what it's accessing, how it's going to be used is an important piece of it. So bring that security team in. Also looking at the use cases and who's actually going to be using those different pieces of AI, so that as you start to think through those use cases and who's going to build what, who's going to support it. Um, then you can set those guardrails as well and say, okay, so are we going to give certain departments the ability to build out prototypes, and then we hand it over to another team to actually build that permanent solution? Like, what is that going to look like? And once you have a feel for what you want that to look like, then it becomes easier to say, okay, let's put the governance, we'll let everybody play in the sandbox. But once we get to the point where we have a solid solution, what does it mean for licensing? What does it mean for security, for supportability? How is it documented? That can be part of the discussion for a governance team. And, our governance is all within IT. So, for the AI piece anyways. So, that's where you also want to look at, like, is this more of a business problem? Is this more of an IT problem? Do we get both groups in? And then kind of build that checklist of what are the things we need to make sure we're doing.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. Another way maybe to look at it is treat any AI capability as at least a change. if not a project, right? So there is
Yeah.
a review process that you go through. I think the other thing is coming up with general AI guidelines for your team because it is so easy to create AI tools today and not have an understanding of implications. So I'll give you a great example, Copilot, right? So
Mhm.
you can go build Copilots, but then it's not that clear. Well, what happens if I share this? How should I share this, right? And so coming up with basic guidelines for your teams to say, hey, here's a safe way to experiment with AI. If before deploying, like, make sure that you've got your sharing permissions. Here are the groups and what it means, and here are the limits, right?
Mhm.
So figuring out part of the questioning is what is this thing going to do? Is it writing to something or just consuming information? Big difference. Just consuming information is usually less risky as long as you have visibility controls. Writing starts to become more risky. So, for example, in our integration automation platform, the AI capabilities use tools and connectors. And within those tools and connectors, you say what that tool can do. So, for example, if you're interacting with your HRIS, you don't necessarily want to turn AI loose on every single capability that's possible in Workday. You want to say, look, I just want to now retrieve a PTO balance from an authenticated user, maybe add a day of PTO, but I'm going to limit that. So I'm not going to give the entire toolbox to AI. I'm only going to give the couple tools from the toolbox they need until we trust it, until we fully understand the impacts that having set the whole toolbox can make. So just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, and actually, I just as you're talking, I was thinking one more thing we should definitely mention is, that that systems view, as you're doing with any workflow, understand like what does that end-to-end piece look like, so you're not breaking somebody else's processes, right? It's easy enough to do that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And you can think of an AI tool, honestly, as a configuration item. If you really wanted to become more sophisticated, that AI tooling is a configuration item, and it might have dependencies, and it might be dependent on things, and it might actually power things. So to avoid uh, the kind of contacts and crashes that Sandy's talking about, it's helpful to think of them as those things. So if I, for example, change the visibility of data for a certain part of SharePoint. So, for example, we can consume SharePoint repositories. Well, if you change the permissions, guess what? It respects that. So that might break other processes if we don't know that the AI agent that you set up in TeamDynamix is dependent on that particular repository and the visibility.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think there was one question. This was a Team Dynamics specific question. Somebody asked is, hey, do you have the ability to do an assessment of our environment, help us assess how ready we are for AI? And the answer is yes, if you reach out to your customer success team. But one thing I would say too is one of the advancements in the AI tooling is that you no longer have to think about a comprehensive knowledge initiative prior to starting. So there is value, for example, in a conversational AI tool, let's say it's plugged into Teams. Having that handle 60% of the questions that are related to 5% of the services you offer. So for that, you can say, all right, the scope of this is to answer questions for the categories of things that create the most questions, or the categories of things that create services that create the most questions. So let's just make sure we have curated knowledge about those things in those tickets and implement that. Now, the key there is if it doesn't know, make sure it quickly states that and get somebody to a live person, gets a ticket created so people don't say they're frustrated. From there, you can kind of expand. So one of the challenges I think maybe even 18 months ago was, gosh, am I going to have to retool all of my knowledge to make this thing valuable? You shouldn't. So I think that was all the questions. So, Sandy, thank you as always. Super
Yeah.
informative. And Alicia, thank you too. Great.
It's great. Okay. Thank you everyone for your time.